Is 7 o'clock. We are going to go ahead and begin. And could we have the flag for the pledge? Thank you. I will go ahead and do that for us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting were sent out. Are there any additions, corrections, changes that need to happen to that? Not hearing any. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
I'll make a motion. Dave Sherman.
Motion made by
Carolyn.
motion made by, okay, motion made by Dave Sherman, seconded, was that Carol?
Yes.
Seconded by Carol. At this time, unless there's somebody that has an opposition, I'll ask you to speak up. Otherwise, we're going to assume that the minutes are accepted as presented. Any objections? So moved. Treasurer's report was sent out as well. Does anybody have any questions on the treasurer's report? Could I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report, please?
I move.
I'll second.
And who was that?
Lance and Fluff.
Motion made by Lance Ronas, seconded by Mike Bennett to accept the treasurer's report. Are there any objections? Not hearing any, we're going to assume the treasurer's report is accepted. At this time, I am going to go out of order and go down to new business as we have somebody from Fort Drum joining us on the line, and I don't want to have to hold them up for the whole meeting. So we have Rafael Rodriguez with us. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. First, I want to just say thank you for the opportunity to speak. Just wanted to put our name out there. I know in the past, there's been some issues with calling Fort Drum Medevac for some aeromedical care. I've been talking to some people out in the community while I was out and volunteering, and I've seen a few issues lately that I would like to bring up. One of them is that I've noticed during inclement weather or anything near that, once the LifeNet and Mercy flights have refused, I've requested to call Fort Drum Medevac, and I've reached a few speed bumps, or you could say. A few of them being one, I've heard that or been told by dispatch or clearinghouse that the MOA is expired. I have found some MOAs that were expired last in 2019, and I'm working to try and fix those and update those. A lot of those are focused on fire and not very specifically on aeromedical. So I'm going to be adding some stuff in there, having our legal and then all the agencies' legals review it right before approvals. Another one has been some like misconceptions on it. One of them I've heard from a few people is that the medical providers on the aircraft are EMT basics. So there's been concern for transferring care from paramedics to EMT basics. I can say that every single medical provider on those aircraft are at the very least nationally registered paramedics and critically care trained. Out of our 18 flight medics, 10 of them are flight paramedic certified. 4 of the 18 are New York State certified, but at the very least, every single one is New York State. Nationally registered paramedics. Some other things have been radio communications, that there aren't any communications from air to ground. We are working that. We are trying to get and have tested out some radios that are able to communicate with ground. So that's another thing that we're working on our end. The other things that I wanted to talk about is our capabilities, what we could be utilized for. About that, the way that it works, and I'm sure all of you know that clearinghouse has to call the civilian people, LifeNet first, Mercy first. They all have to refuse before we can get called to assist. But in the event that we could assist and the other agencies have refused to call, we can be utilized for hoist operations. All right, we have 290 feet of usable hoist on there. We can carry up to 600 pounds on that hoist. We can do ambulatory and litter. We can be utilized for our FLIR for search. We have all the same capabilities that Mercy and LifeNet have with RSI capabilities, our Medtronics, our ProPack MDs, Hamilton T1s, and we have infusion pumps, suctions, everything that the other aeromedical services have. Technically, we are able to take 6 litter patients or 6 ambulatory or a mixture of their some concerns there obviously is we wouldn't really take 6 critical patients at once. So some other questions have been brought up about if we had more than 1 critical patient, how would we deal with that? So I'm also looking into the legalities of how it used to be, what I was told back in, when the mission was called MAST instead of DISCO now. There used to be in this area, the providers would actually just jump onto the aircraft and put on some David Clarks and then treat the patients en route. So I'm looking at the legalities of maybe possibly having that ground provider come on the aircraft with the flight paramedic, so that way we can take more than 1 critical patient. Basically, I just wanted to put our name out there. It's been some hesitance, and I know that a lot of people want to utilize us. They just don't necessarily know what the issues are or how to go about it. There have been some issues in the past that people have called. Dispatch has called our dispatch, and they would run into issues. We had a middle person that is now out of the picture. It's not all in writing yet. The memorandum hasn't been completely approved, but verbally it's been approved that middle person has been taken away. So what would happen is clearinghouse and dispatch would call our dispatch, and then from there they can look at our weather and say whether or not we can utilize it. So we've taken away the middleman, so this process could be a lot faster. Other than that, I just wanted to get our name out and say thank you for the opportunity to speak to everybody. And other than that, if anybody has any questions, please let me know.
Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask?
I do. What are they calling the program now?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
What are they calling the program now? Is it still
It's not MAST, it's DISCA. Off the top of my head, I don't exactly remember what it is. It's like Defense Civil Service, like civilian assistance or something like that. I'll have to look it up and get back to you. Maybe I can look it up right now if anybody else has any questions.
That's all right. If you want to do it, I didn't see it.
Rafael, can you share your contact information so we can get it out among the group?
Yes, of course. To answer your question, and it's called Defense Support of Civil Authorities. So Defense Support of Civil Authorities is what it's called. How would you like me to share it? Do you want me to just verbally say my number and email or put it in a chat?
Why don't you put it in a chat for all, and then everybody will have it there and they can record it. So Paul, I don't know if you and Neil need to maybe have another meeting with the group out there to try to make sure we're all on the same page. We certainly don't want there to be any problems, but to make sure that everybody is familiar and we have a protocol in place on what we're doing here, that would probably be a good idea.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll reach out to Neil if he's not on the feed tonight.
I'm on. I got a question about the National Registered Paramedic operating in New York State. Isn't that a challenge?
Yes, it is.
Does not recognize National Registry.
Yeah, so this is another thing that I've heard about that. It's an issue. Now this is, I've only been here for about a year. In other states, and understand it's other states, it was not an issue. And I have to look specifically into the DISCA, the actual writing of it and the way that we would be utilized in New York State. But in other states, it was not an issue. I just have to look more. I'd have to look deeper because New York State is probably very specific on it.
Yeah, Raphael,
that
welcome
is-
to New York State.
Yeah, Rafael, I can tell you this is Paul Barter. I dealt real closely with one of your predecessors out there when mask was flying. And there was a process for the National Registry folks. They had to submit a document to Albany. Then we had to submit a course number application with those people, at which time we got a course number, and then we were able to do the state practical. And then they were all set after they took the state equivalent exam.
Okay, awesome. Sounds great. I'll look into that and see how we would do it. I basically just applied on my own for my reciprocity, but I did read on the website about state practicals and research. So I'll look deeper into that. Thank you very much.
Paul, I do believe they're back under an executive order of accepting National Registry. So right now may be the hot time to get on that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that there's so many things that are up in flux that may still be a quick workaround.
Raphael, if you go to the state's website, there's a reciprocity form. According to Gene Taylor last week, they are accepting all National Registry as reciprocity under the EO.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely look at that. It was a little bit longer process for me. I guess it was before they were just accepting National Registry. Yeah, I'll look into that, and I could probably get everybody in New York State. If I can jump that hurdle pretty easily and pretty quickly, we can move on to other things as well, other issues that we're getting, like radio, comms, and memorandums of agreement after we get these other paramedics reciprocity.
I do have one question. What, and I may have missed this, but what is your radius of operation? So you're talking, you're based in Jefferson County, Fort Drum borders Lewis, borders St. Lawrence County. What radius of emission will you go?
So speaking with my commander, he wanted to basically cover St. Lawrence County, the entire St. Lawrence, Lewis, and Jefferson County. And also, with that being said, if we were like a little behind on responding, getting wheels up, and the rigs would have to start going en route, what they're trying to figure out is how far south could the rig go before we would say, okay, at this point you're close enough to the hospital. We wouldn't be utilized. You would get there before we would get there. And I think they were saying somewhere around Adams area, going south on 81. But don't quote me on all of that just yet, because it's all in the works right now. I know the commander wanted also to work with out in the Adirondacks to help with search and rescues. So yeah, I don't have very specific answers. These are all great questions. I'm writing them all down. I just don't have a very specific, like on a mile radius, what we want to do. I just know that we wanted to get our name out there for the 3 counties. And then it was the county in its entirety.
Okay.
Raphael, we have a book that we put together that has landing zones that was done. And we actually we have a landing zone in Pulaski, which is in Oswego County, and that still gives you the right amount of time to get to Syracuse versus the ground. So when you talk with Paul and Neil, they can share that landing zone book with you, because that's already been established, and that would probably give you what you need.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. All right. Were there any other questions from anybody?
Thank you so much. You're welcome to stay if you'd like, but I didn't want you to feel that you were obligated to stay through the whole meeting, so.
Thank you once again, everybody, for opportunity to speak. I apologize. I don't have very specific answers for your questions. We're working through it. These are great questions. I've written them all down so I can discuss them and look at the legalities on all of this, so that maybe next time I could have very, very specific answers for your specific questions. But I really appreciate all the time from everybody. Thank you.
Okay, we'll continue on. Enforcement list. Well, they've been very, very busy. I have quite a pile here, so I'll try to make this as quick as I can. June 17th, assessed a civil penalty of $2,000. Suspended for 1 year, effective 6/14. The suspension is stayed. Mountaindale Fire Department First Aid Squad. Violations, Public Health Law A30, 3012B, 306, and 10 NYCR Part 800.21. James Philbin from Staten Island, revoked effective 7/22/21, assessed a civil penalty of $10,000 for violation of 10 NYCR Part 800.3 AP1 and 800.3 AL. August 4th, Francesco Berardi from Staten Island, suspended for 1 year, effective 8/3. The suspension is stayed pending no further violation for a period of 3 years. Assessed a civil penalty of $2,000 for violations of 10 NYCR Part 800.3 AP. August 10th, Yosef Ben Simon, suspended for 3 years, effective 8/5/21. The suspension is stayed. Placed on probation for 3 years, effective 8/5/21. Assessed the civil penalty of $2,000 for violations of 10 NYCR Part 800.16 A2 and 800.16 A9. Effective September 7th, Kevin Steiger from Beacon, New York, surrendered effective 8/24 for violations of 10 NYCR Part 800.16 A11. September 7th, issued a reprimand effective 9/2, placed on probation for 3 years effective 9/2. Assessed a civil penalty of $2,000, half is suspended pending no further violations. Will Davis of Astoria, New York, for violations of 10 NYCRR Part 800.3 A0. Dated September 16th, revoked effective 9/13, assessed a penalty of $2,000, $1,000 suspended pending compliance of payment. Thomas Warrington from Blue Mountain Lake, 10 NYCR Part 800.15 A3 and 800.16 A1. Dated September 16th, suspended for 1 year, effective 9/16. The suspension is stayed pending no further violation for 3 years. Assessed a civil penalty of $2,000. Eric Gessler from Scotia, New York, violation 10 NYCR Part 800.16 A5. September 21st, suspended for 3 years, effective 9/17. The suspension is stayed pending compliance with probation. Placed on probation for 3 years, effective 9/17. Assessed a civil penalty of $2,000, $1,500 is stayed pending compliance with stipulation and order. Timothy Leach, Blue Mountain Lake, 10 NYCR Part 800.16 A29. October 18th, suspended for 1 year, effective 10/18. The suspension is stayed, pending no further violation for 3 years. Assessed a civil penalty of $2,000. Christopher Howland of Amsterdam, New York, 10 NYCR Part 800.16 A5. October 25th, assessed a civil penalty of $2,000 for violations of 10 NYCR 63.D, Center for Allied Health Education in Brooklyn, New York. October 25th, suspended for 1 year, effective 10/22. The suspension is stayed, placed on probation for 3 years, effective 10/22. Assessed a civil penalty of $2,000 for violations of 10 NYCR Part 800.3M and 800.16A11. Kevin McKeon from Lynbrook, New York. Dated October 25th, revoked effective 10/22/21. Assessed a civil penalty of $2,000 for violation of 10 NYCR 800.16A4. Giovanni Gavira from Flushing, New York. June 17th, issued a formal reprimand effective 6/14/21. Assessed a civil penalty of $2,000 for violations of PHL 83306AC 3053 and 10 NYCR Part 800.21, Nassau County Police Department in Mineola. June 17th, certification has been suspended for 6 months, effective 6/9. The suspension is stayed. Placed on probation for 3 years, effective 6/9. Required to take an ACLS refresher. James Schofield from New Paltz, New York, for violation of 10 NYCRR Part 800.15A1 and 2. And the last one, dated June 17th, issued reprimand, assessed a civil penalty of $2,000, $1,000 stayed, placed on probation for 3 years, effective 6/10/21. Richard Harold Jr. from Manasquan, New Jersey, for violation of 10 NYCR Part 800.3A0. So that the Bureau of EMS investigation unit has been very busy. Does anybody else have any correspondence? Any other correspondence? Moving on to committee reports.
Debbie?
I don't see reviews. Oops, go ahead, Ian.
There was a notification about stroke center designation for Mohawk Valley Health Systems that would go to the REMAC and then come forward here. I sent it out to everybody. That was the only other correspondence.
Thank you. Air Medical's Rich Hughes on. How about Mark and Colleen? Would you like to give a report? Mark, we'll start with you.
Can you hear me okay? I really don't have anything super new that I'm aware of other than, and Colleen probably can speak more to this than I, the Watertown Bell 407 is going to be replaced with an instrument rated EC 135. So we're going back to, a lot of you are familiar with that green machine we've been operating as a spare, where it opens from the rear and has a wheeled structure. It'll be similar to that helicopter, our original helicopter before the Bell 407, and it will be IFR rated. And I'm told that that's going to happen in the first quarter. So that will enhance our capability in weather, and it'll also have a wheeled structure. Other than that, really nothing comes to mind spur of the moment.
Colleen?
Good evening, everybody. I'm not going to read the spreadsheet that I sent everybody, but for Q3, to the point that Mark was just talking about with the IFR, weather tends to be a huge wreaks havoc on us, and that's something we can't control. Based off of the data from 2020 to 2021, weather increased at 216%. So having IFR is going to be definitely something. Hopefully we can start flying a little bit more, but again, when it comes to IFR, I'm learning, and we won't, just because things weather-wise look bad doesn't mean we're always going to be able to fly with IFR. And once we get IFR, I will be able to provide that information to you guys so you're understanding more about IFR and learning just like me. Mark was correct in stating that we are going to be getting a 135 with IFR. Rollout with that, I'm hoping it's going to be before the first quarter, but all our pilots are currently being trained. So that is wonderful news. And the only other thing that I want to say is that we, county execs throughout New York State, we've been talking about patient load balancing. We know Central New York hospitals have been on diversion, and a lot of the patients that are being transported out of the North Country are going longer distances, which is taking ambulances out of service for 8 to 10 hours because they're going to places that are not the normal ground transports. And it's not just taking the ambulance out of service, but it's also the oxygen and all that. So what we've been doing is letting hospitals know that if there is a patient that is going to be a greater distance and it's going to have a medical impact because of the delay with the longer distances, that these patients are flyable. I know I spoke with Bruce. I know I spoke with Lewis County General Hospital, and Mark, I believe I spoke with you. And also with Carthage Rescue. But this is all about patients making sure they get to the right facility, and it's not a prolonged delay getting them there. So we are in full force with this patient load balancing, especially with the Central New York hospitals. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Very good, thank you. Auditing, the books are continuing to be audited and there are no issues there. We did, I did send out to everybody who's on what committee, and if you didn't respond, then I put you on committees where we had voids. We had identified the top committees and I put all that out in communication. I put together information, and Jonathan was putting together binders to send to the committees. My goal is in the next month to finish all the other committees, get them the information. So the charter's in there. I developed a form for minutes. I was actually hoping to have PowerPoints to the committees to update for tonight, and the meeting got away from me before I knew it was meeting time. So we will have that for our next meeting so that we can have that to share with everybody. Bylaw, Ron, I don't believe you had a meeting, correct? Because people weren't there. Is that correct?
I heard of a bylaw meeting after the fact.
Say that again. I didn't hear you.
I heard of we having a bylaw meeting after it was time to have the meeting. We got an email. I believe it came in the afternoon, and I evening, and it was supposed to have been. The meeting was supposed to have been, I think, 4 o'clock that day.
Well, when Jonathan is scheduling meetings for me, he is sending them out ahead of time and asking people to do a doodle poll of when they're available, and tries to give 2 or 3 different dates. And that's being scheduled off that. And then there is something sent out saying this is the meeting time and date. So I would like to ask folks, if those meeting times don't work, please respond to the doodle poll, because there's been a couple times that we just have had to, Ann said, to have meetings with just half the people because our schedules just don't line up. So watch for those. I really want to get the bylaw committee meeting. So my goal will be to work with you folks and try to get that done so that we have something to bring forth for the February meeting.
We didn't get any of those polls. I didn't get any of the polls that you speak of.
We'll have to check
Jonathan?
that and see why the email communication must not be going through, or it's going into a spam or trash or something.
Not going into trash, it's not going into spam.
So we'll
No.
work on
Your person's sitting here.
I'll work with Jonathan and we'll check into that and make sure that we're doing that correctly.
That'd be great,
The
as
next
I
one is,
am also wondering about the bylaw committee and any action that we need to take, as I am also on that. Thank you.
Mark, did you get the binder with the information that I put together?
I do have a binder, yes.
Okay, because I pulled bylaws from some of the other councils to give to you folks so that you would have that as a starting point. So I'll work with Jonathan and we're going to try to get that rescheduled then so we can get that going.
That's fantastic. The sooner the better, so we can clear any issues up.
The next committee is CON. We have 2 CONs that have been submitted. The first one is in St. Lawrence County, and I finished the review and they did fix what needed to be. It's gone back to them twice, and I will be deeming that complete. I was trying to work with our stenographer that we've used in the past to have her be able to do the vote, and her schedule just isn't lining up right now. They're doing a lot of catch up in court system, so they're working some nights. She's going to put together some dates. So I am going to ask Jonathan, I'll work with him once I get those dates from her to send out a doodle poll to see what would work for folks so that we can get the quorum. The second one is for 3 Mile Bay transferring their CON to Cape Vincent, and I have not gotten all the way through it. There appears to be a few things missing, but I don't know how bad it is yet. And my goal is to finish that by tomorrow so that we can send a response on that. My hope would be that perhaps we could do both transfers at the same time in a meeting so that we don't tie folks up, and that the cost could be split between the 2 entities for having the transcription. So more to come on that as soon as she gets back to me with some dates that she is available. Again, there's not a lot of people out there that do court stenography, that do it on the side, and they went so long without having court that they're playing catch up, and they're doing a lot of nights as well. So please watch for a doodle poll and respond as soon as you can so that we can see what will work to try to get a quorum so that we can do those votes.
Debbie,
Uh-huh.
I have a question. What's the CON in St. Lawrence County?
It is Hammond.
Are they transferring, expanding, changing?
Say that again?
What is it they're doing?
They're becoming an independent.
Okay, thank you.
You're
No, they're not.
welcome.
No, those are Hammond is transferring from a municipal village-owned department to fire district.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting them all confused here. That's right. Thank you, Ann.
Yep.
And somebody just wanted to know if the stenographer receives compensation. They do, but that comes out of the funds that is paid in by the places that are doing the CONs. They have to put for a transfer, they have to put $1,000 into a kitty, and we pull the money out of there to pay the stenographer, and if we have to send anything certified and things like that. So any correspondence that I send back to them, like letting them know that the paperwork was incomplete, we send that certified so we have a trail of when it went and when they signed for it. Executive committee has not met since we met prior and went through all the committees and went through the people that were put on the committees and identified the top ones to have those committees start working. One of them was the next one, Dave, legislation. Dave, you there?
There, it works better. Okay, I don't know what's going on with my camera right now, but can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I have Time Warner and it's supposed to be really good, but they lie. Sorry. We did have a meeting, and we had all of our members in attendance except Mark Devers replaced Ken Gardner that day. And the discussion was what seems to be the biggest thing that we need to address right away? And after we talked about several things, one of the biggest things that we're noticing has to do a lot with what LifeNet talked about, the transports. Whether it's a 911 call or a interfacility transfer, we're seeing delays in turning the patient over to the hospital. So with the help of Ann and Jonathan, the program agency, a template or a program was put together to start tracking this. And so we're asking all of the transporting agencies to be diligent in tracking their time of arrival at the hospital and the time the patient is actually turned over to their hospital staff. So we can determine how long an ambulance is parking or waiting in order to turn that patient over to staff. I heard the other day that there was some up to 3 hours of a wait before a hospital staff even came and talked to the crew. Hopefully that's being turned in appropriately. The reason we're tracking that is the next thing that we're waiting to come down is the vaccine mandate. We saw the mandate affecting the healthcare workers and the loss of healthcare providers from facilities. And we're aware that hospital-based ambulances are mandated for the COVID vaccine. Agencies above 100 are mandated for the COVID vaccine. It just hasn't fallen out for everybody at this point, but we know it's going to. It's just a matter of when. So our concern was, if we're already seeing a delay in turnover, then we see a loss of personnel at the facilities. What's happening to those turnovers? Are they increasing? Are they staying the same, getting better? What's going on? Then the concern was, when we go into a mandate for all ambulance providers, what might happen there with that turnover time, and why is that important? It's important because if hospitals are delayed, if ambulances are delayed even greater at the hospitals, that's that much longer of a wait time to put an ambulance to a 911 call. So we thought this would give us a base to start running with. As we approach anybody in legislation to talk about this, we've got to have some form of data to give them. They don't like to hear just because we said so. So we as a group thought this was a important way to go, and so this is that's what we set up. And Jonathan, while we were communicating these thoughts, Jonathan was building the template in the image trend system. So anybody have any questions for us with that?
Dave, I don't have any questions, but we did the same thing with our ESO charting program at Guilfoyle. We actually called down and had them create a report for us to track how much time we were spending at a hospital. To go through, we have to track when we hand the patient off in the chart, but they didn't have a report for that, so it would have taken a little bit more time to figure that out. But your software company should be able to create a report like that.
I appreciate that, Bruce, and you are correct. Pretty much anybody's software company could. What we were looking at with the program agency doing it is everybody from our region is supposed to be dumping into their system. So it was automatically pulling the times that were being put into their e-charts. So it would be randomly, or not randomly, it'd be collecting this data for us regularly. And it would allow us to go, we had this meeting on 9/20, so it was going to allow us to go backwards. We had picked a couple of dates to go backwards and then to go forward from 9/20 to track, so we could try to look for any trending in wait times.
Hospitals are now required to report the maximum EMS wait time every day. I don't know if you know that, but that started a couple of weeks ago. That has to be reported through HERDS daily. So there's another place that you might be able to get some data.
Thank you.
I know before as well, when I've reached out to the state regarding the state form, I wasn't able to get the information a couple months ago when I asked. When I called the state, they pretty much said the form is for downstate. We can still get the information and the data, but they never shared how to get that information or data. Have you reached out to the state regarding the state form, Dave?
No, we had not.
Okay.
We had not reached out to the state, and one of the main reasons we hadn't, John, is there is a list of things, maybe I call it a laundry list of things that people from our region have asked New York State for, and we're just not getting a lot of info. So we were looking at, let's build this and we'll have something to use from our own region.
Oh, I agree
Dave?
100%. Especially if we can pull it out of the charts, that would make everything easier.
Okay. Yeah,
Dave?
Mark. Yes.
I've had crews waiting 3 to 4 hours at receiving facilities in the central New York area, and it's deeply disconcerting to me as well.
Mark, the most important thing, one of the most important things we can do is make sure that that time of arrival to turnover of care is documented so that we can get that data and then we can use it.
Each and every time it has been.
Perfect.
But it's really tiring and really challenging to meet the needs of this county, as you're well aware, but thank you.
That was our committee's thought. You know, we're representing, actually, I love the way our committee is set up. We have representatives from all 3 counties on this committee, and we're all seeing the same thing. And the goal was, what can we do, or the plan was, what can we do to try to alleviate? Who knows what it's going to be, guys, but this is nothing more than this is a step off. This is where we can start and build from there, and as much input as we can get from the people who are tracking their crews being held. This is good info.
I'll share a horror story with you from Friday night. Outside of Guilfoyle, as the commercial service, the top 4 ambulances in Jefferson County had a patient in a room, 4 patients, 9 providers in a 15 by 20 room for 3 hours waiting for a bed. 3 hours, 4 patients, 9 providers in one room waiting 3 hours for a bed. And it just disrupted the entire Jefferson County. It was terrible. LifeNet had a person that they couldn't fly because of weather, and they were going to do a ground, and they were calling all over looking for a service that could do that ground. There were second calls in the areas, and it just really caused a lot of problems. I did have a conversation with the state today, and they were reaching out to Samaritan because there's a reg that has to do with stacking, and what was happening is not legal. So there is a bunch of people looking at this and getting involved. So I think I will jump ahead. I was going to ask Paul, when we get to training and ed, if his committee could please look at putting together some training for our departments on EMTALA, because we also had an EMTALA violation 2 weeks ago. We had an ambulance service in the ER. The patient was on oxygen. They were in there 30 minutes. And then the charge nurse came over and told them that they needed to get out of the ER. And the crew said, what? And they said, you need to take your patient out of the ER. And they required them to take the patient back to the ambulance and wait another 30 minutes for a bed. So I think we need to do some education on EMTALA so that our crews are more educated, and it doesn't appear that we're being nasty or whatever when we're talking with the ER staff, but that we can cite facts and give people the proper information to try to stop this. So Paul, I was going to ask again under training and ed, if your committee could take the lead on putting some training together for us to use for our agencies.
Yeah, I don't think that's a big problem, Deb.
Does anybody have anything else for me? I appreciate all that everyone is doing, and this is a struggle, but anything you come up with, somebody responds back, somebody does something, let us know so we can find a way to make this work. You know, we meet with legislators, we're talking with people, we're trying to get help, and this is critical. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Hey, Dave, this is, oh, I'm sorry. Dave, this is Paul.
Yep.
On the data that you're collecting, are you also wanting the facility involved?
I'm sorry, wanting the what involved, Paul?
The facility.
The charts should be doing that. It should have a destination. So their code, the location code, the destination code for that facility should be there. If somebody is giving me a specific, for example, Debbie just talked about this 3-hour one, which is one of the things I was mentioning when I mentioned an incident for 3 hours. If that could be reported directly into us by email with a facility name, obviously no HIPAA stuff, just facility name, what time they got there and what time they actually turned over a patient. I don't want to go outside the loop, make sure we're still doing it in the charts, because that's going to be a string of data that we've got that New York can see as well. But if something like that it would be nice to get a quick email saying this occurred and this is how long it was and it was at this facility. Yes, sir.
Jim,
Okay, I
with
just
the
didn't
new
want this
hospital
to come
requirement,
across as a witch hunt.
Pardon? Two people talked. Somebody ended with witch hunt.
That was Paul again. I know, I just wanted to make sure this wasn't appearing that it was a witch hunt against any specific facility.
No, in fact, the email went out to all agencies when completing your electronic charts. I'm paraphrasing this, Jonathan said it better. But when you're completing your electronic charts, please be sure to accurately report your time of arrival at the receiving facility and the actual time of turning care of the patient over, so we can actually track this real time. So yes, it's all charts everywhere. So that's the hopes is, yes, it's a lot of data, but the bottom line is we don't have to do a witch hunt. They're going to fall out on their own. Who was the other person?
I was just going to ask Jim, with the new hospital requirement, is this something you're tracking internally, or are you pulling it off PCRs that are being submitted?
No, it's tracked internally. So what we did was we built a location in the EMR for EMS. And when an ambulance is told to wait outside with the patient, somebody will come out and get the patient information. They will register them. They will then go into this EMS hold area, much like a waiting room. And then when the patient gets moved to a bed, it tracks that time. And then every morning it looks at the maximum wait time for the previous day. And that goes on a report to HERDS every morning that Mike LeKire submits for at least our hospital.
Is this something that all the St. Lawrence Health System is doing, or is this just for CPH?
I'm only doing it for CPH. I'm not sure if somebody's doing it for MH and GH.
Okay.
There's somebody else at each of those facilities responsible for submitting data, but at CPH, that's what we're doing.
Okay, thank you guys. I appreciate that. Mark, if you're, excuse me, James, if you hear of anything that being it's supposed to be everybody's supposed to be doing it, could you let me know? And then we'll contact hospitals individually and ask if they're. I don't want to come off like Paul said doing any kind of a witch hunt. But if somebody's supposed to be doing it, we can at least find out if it's being tracked.
It's every hospital in New York State is required to report the maximum EMS wait time from the daily reporting period. So it's possible that somebody at New York State might have this data and they could make it available to you.
Okay.
Anne's raising her hand.
They can fabricate it though. Right.
Anybody else?
Go ahead, Ann.
So again, one of our goals, or actually this kind of a dream come true, if you will, when we're able to pull data from all our regional entities. Again, that's why we sent out an email stating the importance in asking department leaders to please have people that, be more conscientious and document the time of arrival at the ER to transfer of patient care. We have found multiple incidences where hospital reported data does not match what's on the PCR, Currently, right now, Deputy Director Steve Desuria is pretty much tied up full-time in Surge and Flex on the hospital side. And every 4 hours, I'm receiving a huge list of diversion notices. With that said, we're going to look at our regional data, which I'm going to share right now. One of the benefits of our office being with FDR HPO is we have a data analyst who's a whole lot smarter than I am, that can take our data, which comes from, and I'm just going to flip through this, it'll go back, takes our data that we pull, the response name, the incident number, the type of service, right? You can just kind of see, I'm not going to get into all this, all the arrival times, and puts it in a summary. Then he does this neat little chart. So I know I'm clicking through them quick like, but again, we've been sharing this with the committee moving on. And currently right now, we have a average, and again, these are all the facilities that our local agencies have done. So we're counting inter facilities as well as hospitals, but our average wait time is only about 0.09. And I know we have one-offs, and I would recommend to ensure that these one-offs are also getting reported to the state on their link, which we put a blue button on our website to make it easy for our providers and or administrators to be able to find that. I have asked the state for that data as well, to no avail. So I think they are getting it, but they're not sure what they're doing with it at this point. So nobody has analyzed it, so they're not able to send it out. But I just wanted to share that with you. So,
And I can add to what Ann's saying too.
40 minutes of waiting time.
Meeting with Jeff, our data guy here at FDR HPO, either this week or next week, to go through and further scrub this data so that we're not having 9 million Claxton Hepburns in the system or Clifton Fines, because there's a dash base, which kind of leads into what we're going to talk about with data stuff. So I'll shut up now.
if you're not on mute, please go on mute.
Okay.
Hello.
Ann?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi. How can we be sure that what the hospital is reporting is what's actually happening versus what we are experiencing?
By documenting it correctly in your chart so we can pull those reports.
Yeah, they are. There.
I'd like to know why our crews are getting delayed so much and what actions are going to be taken to correct this.
2 and 3 hours
Well,
in Syracuse,
the
40 minutes
thing
at local hospital.
The thing we've got to remember with this too is that's an average. So it's everybody who's going to these facilities. So while some are experiencing these huge wait times, at the same time, others aren't. So that's what's making it look different. But when I pull a report, I actually, the initial raw data, I see each individual time delay. So that is something that is easily tracked, but for reporting purposes, we do an average.
If I may, as I said in the report, we just started this. We're all aware of delays and what's going on. That's why I said a specific heavy delay, make a direct point, because no matter how we do this, the way we're collecting it is averages. So you have a specific hard date, the one Deb told us, 3 hours, the one you mentioned yet along, whatever that time period was. Fire an email so we can get the date, the time, and the facility, and that'll help us. But again, we're just starting this. What we're going to be able to do with it, I'm not making a single promise on anything. But we can't do anything if we don't have any. We can't just walk in and say, hey, this is happening, and they say when, where, why, and how, and we say, because they're telling us. We got to have data, guys. That's why it's important we have this data, that we put it in accurately. And yes, when you have those specifics, get them out to us, because these are going to collect averages. These are collecting all the charts.
Are we now actually calling into question the veracity and the truthfulness of our providers out there in the REMSCO and REMAC? Because
Mark,
they're
don't,
completing
Mark,
charts.
do not go there. Mark Dalton, please don't go there. That's not an appropriate. All Dave's telling you is we're gathering data. And all we can do is gather the data based on if people are putting that in the PCRs so that we can put this together. Nobody's questioning anybody's truthfulness or anything like that. We're just in the data gathering phase.
That's all.
We'll continue to gather and send,
Thank you.
but it delays on
moving on.
911.
Okay, you got to mute. Membership, the membership committee hasn't done anything because we really need to get through the bylaws first. So nothing is happening there. Nominating is only once a year, so they haven't met. Mark Devers, peer, please.
Oh, good evening, everybody. We met twice. Basically, what we came up with is looking at different ways to engage providers and agencies. Jonathan worked and put together I think it's a Survey Monkey that is, I believe, now live on the FDR-HBO website for the Excellence in EMS Award. That's the Attaboy one. It's a simple online form. We came up with what is more or less a policy on how we're going to handle those when they came in with a timeline to try and get those out as quickly as possible. We're going to work on some media and some ways for agencies to be able to share social media posts, get the word out there, try and build some more awareness of EMS, and moving forward, put together some, I guess, more or less one-pagers that discuss what EMS is, why it's great, to look at various ways of recruitment and retention. And I believe I hit everything.
I'll just click into the nomination form real quick. So it's here on our website where we've got the quick links here on the side. It's the second one down. And it'll open into a Survey Monkey survey for you to fill out the information.
Awesome. Mark, did the committees meet to review the applicants that were submitted for Vital Signs Awards?
We did not, because we had already met when I saw that they had re-extended those dates, and I believe there was only one application anyway.
No, I meant for the state. Do you sit on, I was thinking you sit on the state one, do you not?
I do not sit on that committee for the state. According to Director Greenberg, the Vital Signs Award winners have been notified sometime last week.
Okay, good. And program agency.
So just to follow up, they actually decided to get rid of the peer committee at the state meetings, which Mark may report more. But when asked if they were going to announce the winners, as they usually do at the meeting, they said letters are going out next week, and that's all. They did not announce them. All right, so I'm just going to skip ahead one on you quick, because usually I combine my report with REMAC. REMAC has not met due to the change in meeting schedule for the REMSCo because of the state meetings. REMAC has been moved to November 1st. So again, everybody is welcome to be there. The agenda will be going out tomorrow. And I will make sure that the REMSCO is copied on the meeting agenda as well. So let me share my screen if I can. Okay. So again, I will be using the same report for both the REMAC and the REMSCO. And just so you know that I can't really see you guys when I am sharing my screen. So either put in the chat or Jonathan or somebody will be watching if there are any questions as I move through this. Let's see if this button will work. Nope. To use this one. All right, so yeah, I attended the RSTAC and the RTAC, both meetings being in September. At the RTAC, oops, I relabeled this, whoops, because it's in more detail for REMAC. I kind of summarized it for this meeting. Anyhow, the RTAC, we reviewed some cases. There was discussion on tourniquet use, and interestingly enough, I just completed some PHTLS courses that contradict what our regional trauma center is saying about tourniquets. But anyways, the case study, a patient who had a tourniquet placed, it was like 4 hours before the patient got to definitive care at the trauma center. The non-trauma ED didn't do a tourniquet takedown and check for bleeding, and there was some question as to whether the injury really needed the tourniquet. But anyhow, it did end up requiring, the patient did get compartment syndrome and end up with an amputation. So again, if you have opportunities at your agencies to educate on tourniquet use, make sure that you're reviewing that. The other one was burns. And again, they're seeing burn patients coming in that have received too much fluid resuscitation, which complicates their recovery. And they are also hypothermic, and there's still some folks that are using wet dressings for significant burns. And remember, if it's greater than, I believe, 10%, you'll want to use dry sterile dressings. So the RSTAC, I ended up on a committee for bylaws for the RSTAC as well. We reviewed those. We've already met and made the revisions needed. Basically, they were just putting in the opportunity for other folks to be officers on that. And they reviewed the new AHA Mission Lifeline Emergency Medical Stroke Routing algorithm, which really there isn't a whole lot of change from what we're already doing. So I just threw that. Whoops, I hit that screen. So I left this stroke video information up here. This is the same stuff I reported last time, but the reason I put it up there is because no other agencies have taken advantage of this, leaving a balance in that grant funding. But because of the grant, the way we received the grant money, we need to go back to the AHA and see what we can do with that. Working with the Stroke Center, we have an idea for a follow-up video in education for providers, so there'll be more to come on that. The Samaritan Medical Center stroke program, we have been receiving feedback. I sent it out in June. I actually in July got feedback for July and August, and because we get them all in one big PDF, we have to separate them, and then I forgot to send them out after Jonathan separated them. But we haven't received any feedback since July, so I need to follow up with Samaritan on that to see if, sometimes these emails get caught into junk mail and we don't see them. All right, so agency renewals, we've been notified of DeGrasse Clare South Russell in St. Lawrence County. Their BLSFR is renewed, and the list of agencies here has received their new operating certificate. So J.S. Coster, Lewis, Town of Watertown, Jefferson, Black River, Jefferson, Evans Mills, Jefferson, and Cranberry Lake in St. Lawrence. So these medical director changes will be presented at the November 1st REMAC. We have received all the paperwork for Cranberry Lake Volunteer Fire Department to change to Dr. Delaney. Dr. Snicer will be moving, so we're working on transitioning all of those agencies. So I think we have Star Lake, and he was going to reach out to all his agencies. The last time I spoke to him, I'm not sure if he has. And the same with Dr. Heiss in St. Lawrence County. She is looking to retire. I've communicated multiple times with all of the agencies that have her as a medical director, and we've changed a few of them. Madrid Rescue will be moving to Dr. Healy. And again, they have done all the paperwork for their BLS adjuncts. Public access defibrillation update. We received forms with just updates from the following folks. I'm not going to read them all off. You can read. Regional BLS adjuncts will be presenting for approval to REMAC, will be Calcium Fire Department for BLS Narcan. And just a reminder that BLS skills are due annually by December 31st for those adjuncts. And again, the process is they can go to an approved CME agency as after they submit their dates, they're listed on our calendar, and they can return the signed off sheet to their agency CME manager, who then puts it into the CME online system. EPCR, there's a whole lot on there. All of our transporting agencies and ALSFRs, we are getting data from. We've been working with the BLSFRs. If you remember, New York State requires, if you want to stay in the New York State CME program, you must be submitting electronically by the beginning of the year. So we have been doing a lot of getting folks on board, as you can see there. I'm not going to read down through all of them. We are currently still in the process of working with Calcium, City of Watertown Fire Department, City of Ogdensburg, and DeGrasse Clare South Russell. A couple of them there have go live dates. You can only go live on a Tuesday, and we got to have 2 weeks notice. So there's a list of our remaining BLSFRs. The ones with a star are ones that are enrolled in the CME program and must go live by 12/31/2021 to remain in the program. So we will be reaching back out to those folks to see where they're at. If they are in bold, they have contacted our office at one point or another, but we have not received any anything else from them. So that's where we stand with that. EPCR data integrity. Oh my Lord, this is like what our lives are surrounded around lately. It's taking a lot of our time. For example, on Friday, I was in a meeting for 2 hours on a data issue, and then again today for an hour. They did the schematron update on June 1st. I had, at the state's request, spent a large amount of time doing an educational program for all for the 2 assigned areas of change that was given to me to do following a trip to Utica with the data team at the state. And they never used the education that any of us did, and just put the exports out there, and then the schematron changes out there. And we have been nonstop fixing issues and moving forward with other issues, because there's been 4 different schematron updates since then to try and help fix these issues. Again, Bob McKenzie reported it at the last meeting. This has been a big challenge for our volunteer agencies. We were, Peter Brody at the state volunteered to come up and do presentations. We started to schedule those right about the time that St. Lawrence and Jefferson County, specifically St. Lawrence, kicked up with their COVID report or COVID cases. So we decided in the best interest of our agencies to not come together in the group, and then we were going to try to do it virtually, and we just haven't got that arranged yet. We continue to work, and we probably have 3 to 5 meetings a week with either agency, a software vendor, the state's data team, the regional data team, to try and resolve issues on this, as well as, and when I say region, I mean the central and light region that we're in the big database with. But again, also with our regional from the REMSCo data committee, trying to get through some of these issues. And I had a call with the state and said, you guys, we need to know your expectations, but we still do not have a data dictionary, which would actually resolve a whole lot of our problems once the state completes that. There's your list of CME Skills Sessions that have been completed since our last meeting. We have some upcoming. I would like to thank the agencies that have submitted those to get them on the calendar. Remember, if you are an approved agency and you're submitting them, please make sure to include the RSVP process so we are not the middleman. RSVP should come directly to you. Thank you all. We kind of lost sight of the process through COVID, so hopefully we'll be able to get back on track. So, non-credentialed, at the end of the first semester, there were 24 providers. After communicating and researching, 7 of those providers were reinstated because they either completed their skills or it was data. They just didn't get entered in the database. So there were 2 of them that had no longer have an ALS affiliation within the region. And then there's 1 that's not practicing. They're only doing administrative work now. Upcoming training, so spring fling, we have it on the schedule for next year. The vendor letters that gone out, online registration has been completed, so the vendors can go in for vendors. So they can go in and register online. And we sent a call for speakers out. We've had quite a few responses for that. So I will need to next set up a spring fling committee meeting so that we can get moving on that. There was, I do also need to seek out and know people's thoughts on whether we should invest, because there is a cost to it, on making the sessions CAPC credited. I did have a local entity who works with us a lot now has the ability to do that, so that's something that the Spring Fling Committee will have to discuss. The 2022 EMS Leadership Conference, as you know, last year because of COVID, we did a virtual session. It was not attended the greatest, which was sad. But we are partners still with multiple area AHEC centers. And we've also brought some other EMS folks. Lee Burns was always on it. Actually, she belonged there, but Steve Kroll and Patty Bashaw have also joined us. We're actually going to do a hybrid version on February 12th. We're in the planning process. The live event will be held down in the Kingston area, but there will be a link to it. We do hope to bring the speakers in live, so you're actually watching a videotape, not just them talking on the screen. We'll see how that goes. It'll be an interesting thing technology-wise, but we're going to give it a shot. So regional providers, crap, now how am I going to do this? I did pull statistics in a comparison to last year's regional providers. And I thought I had it on my screen, but I lost it. Let's see if I can pull it back up here and move it over to my share screen. There's too many screens going here. Hang tight just a second. Let's go forms. Regional data, there we go. All right. So again, there was more data in this, but this is just to give you an idea. You guys see that now? So basically, I pulled the data out of our online CME database, and all the highlighted numbers show you what our current numbers are of EMTs, AEMTs, critical cares, paramedics within each county, and the unhighlighted number above it is what they were around the same time last year, give or take a month. So interestingly, when you look at the total data down here at the bottom, there wasn't a whole lot that, there is some difference. The providers that live outside the region are providers whose home address is outside the region, and we see a few of those like in Lewis County, because they actually have a Boonville address, yet they primarily operate out of Lewis County. So we did send this around to our county coordinators, and Jonathan last week was working with Jen to see what information we could pull out of there and provide to them in Lewis County per their request, because we not necessarily easily, but we can pull the provider by agency. Now remember, they're all primary, secondary, and some of the providers have, more than one secondary agency. So it makes it a little sloppy pulling data. So again, this is pulled by the town in which they reside. It does not necessarily reflect where they practice. So that is that. Back to my report. So we've been busy. So we did send a survey out. I hope that each and every one of you that is registered in our database received this survey and completed it. If not, let us know. Sometimes when we send these survey monkeys out, especially when we send it out to 776 providers, sometimes it goes into spam mail, even though we have to send it out a few at a time. So check your spam mail or your junk mail if you haven't received this, and let us know, and we can resend it to you. But the question was, are you vaccinated for COVID-19? So 85% who reported, and we had 308 responses, said that they were, and 15% were not. Well, that doesn't sound like a big number, depending on if they are the active providers versus the inactive providers. That could decimate the system if there is a mandate. So again, just trying to get data so that if we do need to have data to present, we can. If they're not vaccinated and if they're mandated by the government or the Department of Health, will you take the COVID-19 vaccine? And again, only 24% of the folks said yes or maybe, but the remaining saying absolutely not. We asked if they were fully vaccinated for COVID-19 and mandated by the government or Department of Health, will you take the booster? We had a large portion saying yes, they would, and then a smaller group saying absolutely not, and a few saying maybe. Any questions on the COVID survey before I get into the workforce survey that went out? All right. Oops. Did my regional data go away? Can you see my survey stuff? Okay. Sorry. Now I just lost where I was. Okay. So we had thrown out and we kind of copied, we didn't copy, we shadowed the state workforce survey on some questions, and then we asked some other questions on this workforce survey. We don't have all the information in here because it makes it too long. We're going to put together something that we can send out that's more understandable, or maybe Jonathan did that already. But so basically it was sent to 46 agencies across the region, and we got 31 responses. So again, looking at the folks that are giving us responses, it's all, we have one that had all paid responders. We had 13 that were hybrid with both volunteers and paid EMS, and 17 that were all volunteer that responded. All right, so we ask what percentage of your certified responders respond to over 50% of your agency's calls, and under 10% of the certified responders respond to over 50% of the agency calls. That was the largest majority. So only 25% had more than half of their responders.
And this is for volunteer agencies.
Yes, for volunteer agencies. So both volunteer and hybrid agencies answered this question. Again, do you believe the ability for timely EMS responses in your community is currently impaired by volunteer staff shortages? And again, you can see the answers there. There was a few that thought yes severely, quite a few moderately. Your hybrid said minimally, and there was quite a few that said no, based out of the folks that reported. Again, both volunteer and hybrid agencies answered this question. Has the number of certified volunteer responders increased or decreased in the last 3 years? So it's interesting to see the amount of increases in here. But there are some that have decreased by more than 25%. So the ones in blue are your volunteer agencies. The ones in orange, yellow, whatever color it's appearing on your screen are the hybrid agencies. So again, you're seeing a larger bar here with your decrease by 0 to 10. And so on. All right, if you had to increase the number of paid overtime hours in the last 2 years to compensate for EMS responder shortages, these were answered by the fully paid agencies and the hybrid, and the blue or the hybrid, there was a lot of no's. Increased 0 to 10%, increased 11 to 25. So there were some that have had to increase 0 to 10%. So hybrid agencies, if you had to increase the number of paid providers to cover times when volunteers are not available, yes is in blue, and that 67% of them have increased the number of paid providers to cover times when volunteers are not available. Right, no surprise there. Come on. So again, if your agency has more than one ambulance, how often is your agency relying on mutual aid to cover second or third calls? This was asked by or answered by all types of agencies. So the never was only 3% here. The always was 7%. And again, the green, they kind of don't count because they only have one ambulance. But usually was at 3% and sometimes was at 24%. Kind of gives you an idea on why we have such a high mutual aid usage. And then 28% of the agencies rarely. Where are you losing providers to? This one concerned me because burnout is 30%. That is huge. We, gave them the choices of higher healthcare industry, similar healthcare industry, non-healthcare fields, burnout, or other EMS agencies. So again, this tells us a story we kind of already know, but now we have a little bit of data to back it up. Again, the providers are going back and forth between agencies, so 25% of the providers, but this 30% being the highest one to burnout, I'm sorry, that is scary. But I see it and I sense it. Everybody is tired and they've had enough. And then again, this was, a little bit concerning. Not this one, it's the next one that's more concerning. Do you consider your EMS agency's responders workforce to be healthy, strong, satisfactory, or distressed? At this point, we got over half of our agencies reporting that it's satisfactory. Again, this was before the second, this survey kind of went out really before the second round of COVID hit. So I'd almost wonder if some of this information is already outdated. This, I think, was the one that bothered me because 56% of our agencies feel that their ability to recruit enough certified EMS responders to adequately serve their communities is unfavorable. And the reason why I present this here is, this is part of the REMSCo's overall understanding their system. So I apologize for being long-winded, but I believe this is important information and important information for all of you to work off of as you move through working through your committees. Any questions on the workforce survey? There's some other slides. We'll get them sent out. And the state is actually going to be resending theirs out as well, so which has some similar questions. So it'll be interesting to compare them to the state's 2019 or whatever year it was they did their survey to our similar questions and whatever their results will be, but we won't see their results for another year or two. EM resource, we've talked about it a million times here. We have it, we've made it available for the agencies. If you want to know about diversions, all of our Jefferson County hospitals are using this faithfully. Lewis County's been pretty good about it. St. Lawrence County is hit or miss, but again, it's important that we get out of our silos and that we are communicating to try and help these problems that were discussed earlier. New York State has signed a contract with Javari, and eventually this will be required for all agencies. So no better, it might look a little different or your agency name might be a little different, but if you're versed in our system, you'll be able to use their system when they come out, and the North Country will be ahead of the game on all of this. The state is currently in the process of setting this up. Again, I received diversion notices. My email gets bombed every 4 hours. I don't send them out to everybody unless it's going to affect our area. And that's because basically they're still taking our specialty care patients, our traumas and burns and stuff, strokes. All right, here's the list of PEC agencies. Had to bring this back out. We haven't seen any movement or any new agencies come on this in quite some time. This is again another push. Again, PEC stands for Pediatric Emergency Care Coordinator. You basically got to do the paperwork and sign up. You'll get a newsletter with more info. And basically all you're doing is identifying within your department a champion for pediatric care. They don't have to be knowledgeable, but they'll be about pediatric care, but they will be given the resources to be able to share and learning opportunities as well. So if anybody's interested in that, please reach out to our office and please spread the word. So some miscellaneous things the program agency's been up to. I am participating in a state quality metrics tag. They're going to be pulling routine measures that you'll be able to benchmark your agencies against based on your data. But first and foremost, they are rewriting the state quality assurance manual to kind of help guide people down using a different process. Unfortunately, QAQI gets a bad rap that it's punitive, so it's going to be a teaching document to show how to develop projects and aim statements and follow through on the data and the projects. I keep reminding them that they need to keep this simple. But with everybody being on electronic data, you can actually start tracking some of this stuff and setting benchmarks within your own agency. I know we have a few agencies that do this routinely. So if you're interested more in that, we can provide you more information. We did send out a reminder to agencies mid-year about the narcotic forms to make sure they're using the new ones because they're not on the BEMS website. So they have to go to the Bureau of Narcotics website to make sure they have the new forms. And we've been participating in weekly COVID-19 update calls in St. Lawrence County. I'm excited to announce that FDR HPO has worked diligently and we are currently a PSI testing center. We, at this time, currently don't have the platform installed yet for the EMT test, but we're hoping, I forgot the date of it, but hopefully by mid-November, we'll be all set. We had to do hours upon hours of training. We have to open up to all different types of applicants. So we're seeing a lot of TSA tests and unified court system folks coming in to test. At this time, we have 4 complete testing stations set up, and I believe we just got the computers. Believe it or not, computers are on back order, like everything else, to be able to set up 2 more testing centers. And Jonathan, is it 8 we're shooting for?
Yes, and I can actually give more even today update. So we do have the stuff for the Atlas system, which is the New York State certification test, is up and going. We're just waiting on our certificate to be sent back to us, so that we are good to go with that.
Okay, so that's awesome news. So the Maru app, I had sent information out. We had the Maru app guy here. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of folks in our region have used the Maru app because they're using the collaborative app. But again, we won't be able to update our collaborative app at this time. I've been chosen to represent the program agencies on their concerns with the Maru app. Again, our outdated information still remains outdated. We had that discussion, which finally at the state EMS meetings, which triggered Maru to get the contacts. And now I have a whole training module to do on the Maru app, along with Jonathan, on how the REMAC and REMSCo will be able to ensure all the information is updated. And we will be looking at what providers think about this and relaying that to both the state to see if the Maru app is something that's going to continue and replace our collaborative, or if we're going to look at other opportunities. So again, we need feedback. So if you haven't used the Maru app, please do so and fill out the survey. If you need to know where to find it, call Jonathan. The EMS Memorial was held September 30th. It was actually a beautiful ceremony. And both Jonathan and I attended it. And thank you to Indian River for allowing us to utilize one of their ambulances. So that we had representation down there from the service. New York State Leadership Train the Trainer program. I attended a 3-day program. We're awaiting the materials on that. They also put out a mental health Train the Trainer. Mark Devers and I attended. Ditto, we're awaiting for materials and more guidance on that. The Vital Signs Conference is November 11th through the 14th. The brochure is out. Housing is available, and they will have a hybrid option. And that's a little bit of what we've been doing the last few months. Any questions?
And I just wanted us to add in there that we have gone live with the CME program, having it submitted electronically. It seems to work very, very well. And I'm seeing a turnaround time of like 6 days for people when I go in and check in the health commerce system. It's updated like in 6 days right now with submitting it electronically. So that's live with our region. So if you have any questions, make sure you reach out to the program agency so we can make sure you're submitting your CMEs if you're in the CME program electronically.
Yeah, that's a sore subject today. Well, but yes, the portal is out there.
Any questions for Ann? If not, we'll move on to Larry and the Safety Committee, please.
All right, well, we didn't get a chance to meet because a couple of people couldn't make it for various reasons. But nonetheless, we have communicated via email, and we've come up with a couple of things that we think we're going to pursue here. One of them is a monthly topic, and we haven't decided what those topics are going to be. They're going to be probably range all over the place, but we'll look to have that sent out to everyone, basically. We're hoping to highlight the various, perhaps some obscure stuff that folks may or may not be thinking about on a daily basis. So this will help light them up a little bit on that and get them going. Another thing that we did discuss briefly, and we're looking at how we can further move with this, and actually you just gave us a little hint on where maybe where we get some info put on it, and that is a mental health issue that it's definitely a safety issue, because if we have folks that are burning out or having a problem on the job, that could be something that can cause some problems. So those two items are two things that we're going to be working toward. And like I say, we're going to be looking for various and sundry topics to send out. Won't be anything too involved, and because we don't want to overwhelm folks, but we also don't want to send stuff out that they say ho hum and why am I looking at this? So we got to find that balance in there, and that's what I've got right now.
Thank you. Mark, the REMSCo and CMAQ report.
All right, I will try and keep this as short as possible. We met last week in Albany in a hybrid fashion, which the in-person option was something that kind of spurred a lot of stuff along. In the state training and ed world, there's going to be a lot of staffing changes. Liz is retiring the end of the year. Gene Taylor, who's the director, is retiring first quarter. They are supposedly hiring another one. They are doing an instructor updated vital signs. There's a instructor portal that they want all communications that have to do with EMS classes for instructors, or from instructors, I should say, to go through, and it's ems.instructors@health.ny.org, or I'm sorry, .gov. As Debbie said, the CME portal is up and running. You have to use it. If you send the paper forms in, they're going to come back in the mail. They're still contemplating how to approve the BLS skill sheets, the course sponsor geography thing. that's been around, where core sponsors don't necessarily have a specific mass of land that they're allowed to cover, is waiting DLA approval. There was some conversation that actually came from this region on having multiple instructors break up an EMT class or paramedic class, instructors talking or teaching to their strengths. Basically, the DOH, right after they get done talking about innovation and education, decides that they're going to say that they don't know how to track it and we're stuck in tradition. So they will allow 2 instructors to get credit for a course, provided it's about a 60-40 split. There's 2 new policy statements that are in effect, 2107 and 2108. 2107 deals with additional clinical sites, urgent care centers, et cetera, and changes it from 10 hours to 10 patient contacts. And 2108 discusses hybrid or asynchronous education. They're looking at some trauma data. Ped trauma patients going to pediatric trauma centers, obviously that's not completely applicable up here most of the time, and trauma patients going to non-trauma centers, and they're going to be pulling that data. You know, there's a lot of evidence to support trauma patients going to trauma centers. It's important that they get there. You know, a level 3 trauma center has better outcomes than a community hospital. They're still waiting on the commissioner to approve BLS iGel study. The changes to the protocols should be out soon, according to the director. They have been approved and they're working on the education. They're continuing to work on the state disaster protocols that they can turn on and off, basically by region. And they're continuing to, or they're going to start looking for some more data on burn patient fluid administration. They've gone away from the Parkland formula and are going towards a consensus formula, which is a lot less fluid and pressor use. There was a lot of conversation about Suboxone in ambulances. It's been tabled for now, but it kind of sounds like it's coming as part of some of the ET3 stuff. The CMAC had a lot of conversations on diversions. The Central New York is kind of the poster child for diversions across the state. They highlighted a specific state-run hospital, and that brought about the Surgeon Flex Center that Steve DeJura is running most of the time. And I'll get to more of that. A lot of it has to do with nursing shortages. They're hoping that ET3 can help kind of mitigate some of those. Unfortunately, there's only 25 agencies in the state that are doing it. One of the things that they're going to be talking a lot about is alternative modes of transportation on inner facilities. We have a lot of patients that are moved by ambulance that don't need an ambulance. A psych patient is a great example. You're wasting resources, and you know, we've got plenty of examples of facilities that ship 5 or 6 psych patients in a night and then can't move a medical patient. This is basically a quote: things are going to get worse for hospitals before they get better. As a result, they will get worse for EMS before it gets better. The CMAC is going to try and get itself on some of the hospital groups and the larger hospital associations and try and get some input there on EMS. They're pushing the Department of Health to issue a Dear Administrator letter that wall time or long wait times are not appropriate. EMS is not a solution to their staffing issues. Some legislative stuff. There's a bill to allow EMTs to do vaccines. It's currently on hold because of the executive order. It's from Gottfried. I don't have the number of that one. And there's been, the legislative committee has reached out to the governor, pushing her to sign off on the EMS, rural EMS task force that's sitting on her desk. They're asking agencies to write letters to the governor encouraging her to sign off on this bill. There was also some letters that were sent on the Medicaid rates and education rates, and again asking for support of agencies to send letters to elected officials and the governor in support of increasing Medicaid and education rates. In Jonathan's second email today, there was a document on there, EMS in crisis. Mike Benali from LaGrange Fire Department spoke. He basically read the entire paper. They are issuing a tag, or they are creating a tag on the collapse of the EMS system. The EMS system is collapsing, and it is a nationwide issue. It is not isolated to here. Their goal is to have a white paper out by Q2. So Ann talked about provider numbers, the picture that Jonathan just sent up. The state of Texas EMS director put out the state of Texas EMS director, who they apparently have about the same number of EMS providers as we do in New York State. And what he did is, or they did, is ran how many times each provider ended up on a PCR. So they took their 70,000 providers and how many times did they end up on a PCR in the course of a year. And in 2019, 45% were on a PCR. In 2020, 43% were on a PCR. Year to date, 27% are on a PCR. We have 785 providers in the region. The million-dollar question is how many of them are actually doing anything at all? And that's a really interesting point to ponder. Rich Grant, from who used to be at the Bureau, who's now in Medicaid, the state has approved an ET3 model. Currently, it's for the existing 25 ET3 agencies. It sounds like they are going to be opening up the alternative destination for all agencies across the state, provided the local REMAC and REMSCo approve those alternative destinations. Cost data collection is coming in the next month or so. 75% of the agencies in the state will need to report cost data collection. That is probably the most important thing that we will be doing as an EMS industry. They have not looked at EMS pricing since the 90s when they created the fee schedule. If you are not familiar with it, if you bill Medicare and you're not familiar with it, you're going to get called. Inaccurate data is going to make the problem much worse. They are working on revisions to the emergency vehicle operations policy statement. There's a lot of look at provider resiliency. The New York State Cares Up program, which is geared towards first responders. The state is going to be taking kind of a hard look at data and as a result, quality. They are updating the state CQI manual, and I would kind of tell you that the state's really going to be looking at everybody's data, especially for quality metrics. The state EMS advisory for pediatrics docs wrote a letter to the commissioner pushing EMS providers to get vaccinated. EMS for children is looking at sepsis and pediatric agitation management. And the CMAC, after spending a very long time discussing why they were hemorrhaging providers and can't move patients and there's no ambulances available, had a 45+ minute long conversation on writing a letter to the commissioner to mandate vaccines, which ended up not passing the CMAC. There is no current indication or word on vaccine mandate for EMS at this time. It sounds like it's coming federally, but again, there is no confirmation or denial of it at all. And in other exciting news and all the things going on, we created a tag for diversity and inclusion and implicit bias in EMS. And I think I hit the highlights. Any questions?
Now, just a comment that's, we've also sent information on the cost data collection to the first and second year chosen participants. Again, if you haven't been part of the lucky draw yet, you will be, so it's important to prepare for that. And all that information is available on the CMS website, and lots of resources to help guide data collection.
Okay, we're going to keep moving. I know that it's getting late. We've got a few more things here to cover, so let's keep going. Paul, training and ed.
At this point, Debbie, we have met. We will be moving forward and getting that information on the MTELA for you.
Okay, I am aware that most our course sponsors, your renewals are due at the end of December, and tentatively we're not scheduled to meet until February. So I'm asking the council to give me the authority to sign these if the training and ed have reviewed them and find them to meet the requirements so that they can be submitted.
I think we should do that. Does that need to be a motion?
Please.
I make a motion that we allow the director to sign, chair to sign the course apps when they come in, as long as they are actually completed and have been reviewed and approved by the training committee.
I'll second that, Lance.
Lance, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any question?
Yes. Now, because of the CONs that are coming in, could those be brought up at the special meetings for the special meeting for the?
If they were done, they may, but I envision our CON meeting probably being within the next 10 days. I know that Jefferson County is working on theirs, but they're waiting to get back signed agreements with their agencies and things. So Ron, I don't think we'll have them back in time, but if we did, we certainly could. Any other
Debbie,
discussion? Mark,
Debbie,
did you have
quick
something?
Course sponsor renewals are just short form this year.
That's correct. Hearing no more, any objections to this? If not, then we're going to assume that it's passing. So moved. Moving on to county reports. Paul, Jefferson County.
Okay, well, we've been continuing to be busy. Currently, we've got 4 courses going on, a basic EMT, original refresher here in the city, as well as one at South Jefferson High School, and a basic original and refresher up in Lewis County. With the new policy statement out that Mark alluded to, 2108, we are looking into being able to store all of our data, which is one of the requirements now if you're doing any online. That information has to be recorded and maintained. So we're working on that diligently, and hopefully move forward. Moving into the spring, we're anticipating putting on a basic class in the city, as well as a class out at Indian River. Plan is also to move forward with an advanced course. I received course approval today for a paramedic refresher that will be going from January to June. And if there is enough desire, we will attempt to put forward another CFR course. Unfortunately, the last two have had to been canceled because of low enrollment. Back in April, we did a statewide instructor update. We had 49 participants from around the state. That went very well. We are putting on a certified lab instructor course, an original, that actually is going to be tomorrow night, Wednesday night, and Friday night. And we're working in conjunction with Mid-State. So we'll have a class in the Herkimer region, in Watertown, and there will be one up in St. Lawrence County and Gouverneur. So we're looking forward to getting that. We have established a Facebook page. That's a work in progress. We are continuing to assist with the Herkimer Paramedic Program. We assisted with the airport drill in September. We had 4 participating agencies that came out on the beautiful Saturday morning in the rain. And in August, we also participated in the Fort Drum disaster drill. We had 6 agencies that were involved with that. We continue to be very actively involved with the COVID-19 vaccinations. And to date, we have administered through the community paramedicine program in our county. We have given 360 in vaccines to date. And with the new guidelines for boosters, I've already been getting calls, so I'm sure we'll be reaching out to our agencies for some more help. Non-response rates since April to September have averaged from a low of 2.54 in April to a high in September of 6.45. We have had our inaugural Ems Advisory Board. We met in September, set up some officers and assigned some committees, and have their second meeting is scheduled in the first part of November. As Debbie had alluded to, we are working on both our course sponsorship and our special course sponsorship, but Chris has been working very diligently, and what we're lacking at this point for completion is really our agencies doing their letters back to us, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll get all those and we'll be ahead of the curve. They are all required by December 31st. So I'm hoping that the agencies will respond and get these things accomplished for us. But other than that, we're staying busy. Anybody have a question?
Hearing none, we'll go on to St. Lawrence County.
So we're continuing our courses at Clarkson. Everything seems to be going well up there. As we all know, Canton gave up their course sponsor, and Clarkson's now running the EMT classes. Their first one should be finishing up. Well, their first on-campus one should be finishing up here pretty soon. In terms of numbers, so our countywide coverage rate is about 93% year to date. It was about 95%, 94, 95% last year. So our coverage rate is slowly decreasing. Also, our response times are slowly increasing. We were about 12 minutes and 30 seconds last year. I think we're up to about 14 minutes on average year to date this year. Again, our no responses are increasing a lot. I know EMS has been a hot topic at NISAC, so that has a lot of our elected officials interested now, as well as we've been working closely with our elected officials to kind of give them an overview of what's going on within EMS, because a lot of them are unfamiliar with what's going on. They're looking for solutions. We're working together to try to figure out plans or different avenues to take to support EMS in the county, try to get that coverage rate up a little bit and our response times down. I think one of our longest response times that I saw was well over an hour. The other thing that we're doing is we've been activating the county EMS all call a lot this year, to the point where I've gotten phone calls asking people or asking me to take it out of their pagers. That's how much we've been using it. So what that means is if we tone out more than 3 departments, we activate every department in the county to try to get an ambulance to go somewhere. One of the longest ones I can remember was we ended up having an out-of-county resource come in to answer a call. Again, this is something we're tracking very closely and that we have all the statistics on. The other thing too is by the next meeting, our end of year report will come out. If you're looking for anything specific on the end of year report, let me know. I'd be more than happy to include it. We usually do averages on natures and call volumes, time of day, that kind of stuff. We're also going to include no response averages this year. But if you're looking for any specific statistics, please let me know and I can add that to the report or forward it to you individually. That's all I have for St. Lawrence.
Thank you. Bob, Lewis County?
It took me a minute to get my phone off of mute there. I apologize. So we're still chugging along in Lewis County. One of the things that we're having to deal with now is the new ambulance diversion situation, which is something that's quite remarkable and we've never had to deal with before. And trying to get the providers to understand the difference between ambulance diversion and medical control redirection, which is also happening as well, where they call in and they give report and they say that they need to move on to a different facility. Unfortunately, with some of the ambulances in the south, that means turning back around and covering the same ground that you just went over to get the patient to a facility. And that's been a challenge, trying to get some of our providers to understand that. A lot of the other thing that we had to deal with as well is the parking lot wait times. If there's not a COVID room available for COVID patients, they're having them wait in the parking lot inside the ambulance, and sometimes that can be for up to an hour. And that's challenging, especially with a volunteer environment that we have here in the county. Getting the feedback from the providers, they're frustrated because they're already volunteering time and the ambulance call is a total of 2 hours, and now all of a sudden now they've got to wait in the parking lot of the hospital for another hour waiting to transfer care. And basically they're sitting inside of a closet with a COVID positive patient, and of course that heightens, you know, the nervousness of what's going on. So trying to deal with that's been a bit of a challenge. The office is still continuing to restock all the agencies in the county with the PPE, N95s and simple face masks, as well as the gowns and other equipment that's needed to do these COVID calls. And we're working to restock that PPE through grant funding and various other avenues. So it's a constant challenge and the office is always busy. I did meet with the regional state police winter weather meeting in Adams Center. It was decided, or it was told to us at that time, that the 81 closures will now be a local decision rather than a decision made out of Albany. So everybody say yay with me on that one. Because we know how to drive in this stuff, and somebody who doesn't know how to drive in this stuff is usually making those decisions on when and where to close 81. So that was one positive thing that came out of it, and I did want to bring it up at this meeting. So We're still in discussions about EMS and fire recruitment in the county. Both sides of them are starting to hurt just as much. You saw the dismal numbers for Lewis County in Ann's report, and I've been working with county officials, and we've been working towards the discussion of ads and working with various other types of avenues to try to do some recruitment and retention as well. Bottom line is, forgive me for how this is going to sound, we stink at marketing ourselves. The only one that I've really seen do a successful job is Lance and his crew out there and their TV advertisement. I hope that that's working and working well for them, because that's something that we're looking at right now. So our county officials are engaged with us, and we're looking for solutions to try to up our numbers. Our system status is working and working well. We know what agencies are in service and what agencies are out of service. And there are quite a few agencies out of service during the day, and shame on them for being gainfully employed. That's just the way the system is right now. So even some of our drivers are senior drivers, and are they necessarily the person that we want to have on those COVID calls? So we're looking at all avenues to try to do further recruitment, to try to increase our numbers within the county. So just another, I'll end on this, another note, our current vaccination rate within Lewis County is at 49%. So I expect our COVID numbers to remain relatively high. And I do expect that that's going to be a continuing problem for us. So if you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out. If you have any ideas for me, please feel free to forward them. I would really look forward to anybody's input. So, end of report.
Thank you,
And I have a
Bob.
quick question for you. Is it possible to do like a regional recruitment program through REMSCo or through your office?
Anything's possible. And we have in the past, we've done some different recruitment and retention things, usually kind of planned by either our committees. We've worked with FDR-HPO's workforce to try and do some as well. A lot of it comes down to the funding and finding the funding to do that. We're, on an everyday battle to get our measly little amount of money to keep our office operational. But if we find funding, we certainly can assist with those things. And if anybody has ideas, let us know, and along with the cost, because maybe we can search some funding out for it as well.
Is this something
on that note? I have some resources that I've used in the past at no cost. I have access to I may have access to broadcast quality cameras, and can get the assistants to produce something anyhow. I've done some commercials for the Adirondack Railroad and following that line. So if someone can come up with stuff that we can do along that line, I think I know somebody who would probably put together a 30-second to 60-second spot for us, probably at no cost, and I'll do the camera work to get started.
That would be nice, because I know that when we did the stroke things, the amount of money was ridiculous that just to get what little airtime that we got.
Well, the airtime is another story, but this being a public service type thing, it's entirely possible if we can come up with a 60-second spot that's informative and gets our point across, then many stations, both TV and radio, have a certain amount of public whatever they have to do every year. So it's entirely possible if we can produce some sort of a spot for them, then and it'll come out. I'll have it on a thumb drive when it's done. Then perhaps we can get something going. I'll have to talk it over with the folks that would do the production, but This is something I've done in the past, so it's entirely possible. If we, again, we need to come up with a script, we need to come up with what we need for video and other graphics, and take it from there.
Okay. Old business, data committee report.
Second, I'm writing a note. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I will share my screen. I put my information into the project. Maybe I'll share my screen. Into the project committee report thing that you gave us. Again, I'm not going to read through it, but you guys can get an idea of where we're at with this. Again, the purpose of this meeting is to kind of sanitize data and create education surrounding data points that are unclear, that help with the quality of our data. We've had quite a few meetings. As you can see, at 5:20, 9:09, 10:14, I'm in the process of putting together a doodle poll to send out for another one. We've had we discussed our goals, and again, we see a couple of different paths moving forward with some of this. We've shared a lot of information and where we're going with this, and what we've ended up doing is based on the NEMSIS data dictionary, which is what all the fields are coming out of for the EPCRs. And again, the missing piece is that state data dictionary. We're trying to come up with education on what is expected to be documented. And so, for example, when I said to the committee, I says, well, we'll start out with e-response. It's the first field on the PCR that we use. We're like, oh, that'll be simple. Nobody should have many questions. An hour later, we found we're all documenting differently. So again, the people on this committee represent all the different, they have a good working knowledge of the background and the capabilities of the current charting system, or all the current charting systems that are being used in the region. So it's been some really interesting discussion. We are actually, in the second meeting, we decided to start kind of creating PowerPoints with the information to go through. So when all is done and said, we may have some education stuff that can go out once we refine it and get answers to questions. But most of it has come down to what is the state actually looking for. So that's where we are with that. It's this is no easy task, and I appreciate everybody. So I'll give you one example. E-response 08, the fields on the PCRs that need to be filled out. And again, the e-response is the NEMSIS definition of it. You're seeing it on your screen as, like a delay. What is the, a delay on scene, delay on response, delay. So basically we asked what a delay was, because that was one of the questions. And basically a delay constitutes anything outside the norm of what you would normally experience or more than half an hour. And this is the state's definition there in red. And they kind of went by the accreditation standards. So, with your stroke, 20 minutes, trauma, 15, STEMI, 10. But those are just different questions that we've had. And some of it's just doing, getting folks to understand it. So we are working on education. We're working on questions. As you can see, I'm not going through all this. These are our notes just from our first few meetings. So we've been able to help with a few problems. This LZ destination, that's become an even greater problem at the state level based on them wanting hospitals to be able to get the first response charts, or charts when the ambulance itself treats a patient but does not necessarily transport to the hospital, i.e. transfer to air medical. In our region, that's not necessarily a problem because we had it fixed so that hospital hub would show them. But again, we're ahead of the 8 ball on this, and other areas of the state don't have that, so it's become an issue. We think we have a solution, and we will be presenting to the state next week when they have their meeting. So that was my 3 hours worth of meetings over the last 2 days. That's the data committee report. Questions?
I'll just kind of add, and hopefully when we get all done with going through what the NEMSIS definitions are and going through as a group to figure out everything, we will be able to come out of this on the other side with much clearer points for people to meet. Currently, like if I pull a report, we'll use the one that we used for the legislative committee with hospital delays. It takes me probably half a day to scrub the data and make everything so it looks right and makes sense, because each hospital is documented differently in each system. Or like Clifton Fine has a dash in it for some of them and doesn't for others. Same with CPH, either it's CPH or it's Canton Potsdam Hospital. So it's just going through and getting things cleaned up, so when we pull data, it is meaningful and doesn't take 6 hours to even get to where you can start making it meaningful. I'll shut up now.
Any questions for the data, on the data? Josh Levesque was supposed to be on to talk about the bulk drug committee report. I spoke with him about that when we were at the compliance training, and he was going to be on to give a report on that, but I do not see him on. Did he send anything to you, Jonathan or Ann?
I talked to him briefly today. And unfortunately, I do think he is teaching, and that is why he is not here. I think he was going to try to find relief, and that may not have worked out. And I didn't write down what he told me. So, basically at this point of the game, their recommendation is that the appears by the data that we brought back in that the BLS agencies aren't having much issue. They're still able to get the small amount of medications they need without having to spend a lot. The other agencies, at this point, we've hit dead ends every route they've tried to go. So the best advice is to try and work with your local hospital system to be able to replace those medications. Mark Devers and myself had a discussion on the way back from the state meetings, and I mentioned it to Josh today, so he's going to try and pull some data for me. But I'm going to be putting it out to the REMAC next week. We do have a minimum equipment list, and as I said, it's a minimum equipment list. Is it time for us to get rid of the onboard ambulance supply, keep the minimum amount of equipment necessary, and then let the agencies decide what extra medications they need to keep on board their ambulance, because they're more likely than not to use it based on their area. So for example, you live somewhere where there's a lot of overdoses, you may keep more Narcan. And so I'm going to be looking for input from our supply managers, directors, ordering folks on their thoughts of that, because if nothing else, maybe it'll save these agencies a little bit of money if we can decrease the amount of onboard equipment that they have to carry or that they need.
Very good. I will tell you that today was the exchange with Samaritan, and Epi 1 to 10,000 is on the back order list at Samaritan again. So I don't know if others are going to start experiencing the same problem with where they get their stuff, but Samaritan didn't have Epi 1 to 10,000 that they could do a med exchange for. Going on, anything else under old business that we need to cover before we hit the new? Okay, 2022 meeting schedule that was sent out. Any questions on that? Can I have a motion to accept the proposed 2022 schedule then?
I'll make it. Mark.
Mark Devers made a motion to accept what was submitted to everybody. Do I have a second?
Second, Dave Sherman.
Seconded by Dave Sherman. Any further discussion?
Just to add that the state is discussing having their meeting the first part of January, just as an FYI, whether it happens or not.
Any abstentions? This will be the schedule that we will go with then. We had the Fort Drum Commander update at the beginning. The next one is for your information. Our 2020 tax return was completed by John Purcell and submitted, and it was a $750 fee for him to do that, but that was done and submitted. We had filed for an extension. Any other new business from the floor?
I have something real quick and then I'll make a motion to adjourn. I promise. Provider mental health is a big thing. And one of the problems that actually came up last week at the state meetings and I've seen a lot about, there's EMS providers don't like to ask for help, and they also don't know where to find the help. And then the help they may have may not be the best for their situation. And I would just ask that we spend some time either creating a tag, or Larry brought it up, and maybe moving it to the safety committee, of trying to vet some actual legitimate first responder driven mental health resources that we can put on a poster in stations that they can call when they need help. And then when we figure out what we're doing with that, just assume there's a motion to adjourn.
And Bob McKenzie had asked that that be looked at. He had an issue over in Lewis County a few weeks ago and really struggled, and determined at that time that we need to look at doing something different. And that's why I believe the safety committee is going to take that. But if you recall, a few years ago at Spring Fling, we did share information about Code Green, and we try to support that endeavor. But I'm sure we can get some more additional information together and make that available to our first responders, and get that out to folks.
Debbie, it's Mark. I can get the information, but I don't know exactly the name of the service. But I know at Lewis County Search and Rescue, we have a service where folks can call an 800 number, and it's not horribly expensive, and we just have felt that it's important. LifeNet provides a number like that as well, that it's just a go-to number where certified mental health workers are there to chit chat, route you back into the community, do whatever it is they do. But that is available, and it's really not that expensive in my opinion.
But it also said you can do it as like a natural smoothie where you add in like.
So the state does have a mental health website. I haven't been on it lately to see how robust it is, but they do have a tab on there. The Bureau of EMS does as well. So there may be some information there, Larry, that can be helpful for that.
And you know what Mark brought up about that service, this may be a good opportunity for us to get it at a lower rate if we do some group purchasing. If a bunch of agencies go in together, maybe we can get the price even further reduced. So something that we should probably look at.
There is one right in Watertown as well. When I was with Guilfoyle, we worked with them. It was Pivot, P-I-V-O-T. It used to have a different name, but that's the name they're going by now. They're right in State Street in Watertown.
Dave, and I have used them before. but the problem with it was they aren't really EMS oriented. Bruce, do you continue to use them?
We use them. We often push them to our employees to use Pivot for various different reasons. They do, they'll do financial consulting, they'll do family issues, they'll do children issues, education issues, workplace issues, mental health counseling, but their scope is pretty limited to it. If it's something they can't handle, they'll try to push it up the chain to another mental health expert.
So it's more of an employee assistance program.
Correct, but it's a start.
Yep.
We don't have a lot of people that really go beyond that, to my knowledge. I do get a count quarterly on people that have used it, and our numbers are typically pretty low.
Any other new business that needs to come from the floor? So please look for a doodle poll as soon as I have the dates from the stenographer so that we can get those COTs taken care of. Mark had made a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Anybody abstain to closing this meeting? It's 9:26. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Everybody.